moving on to video number 2, the other video I was talking about my reactions to My Family and Autism, the Christine McGuinness documentary, which ends with her getting diagnosed rather dubiously with autism by Simon Baron-Cohen just because she got a high score on the AQ test, and it looked like he was asking her some questions about her life and tick boxes because she happened to be a loner for 8 years, even though she still managed to maintain a relationship in that time, and even though she still managed to look after herself without support, and even though she basically managed to access society and have 3 bloody children. I mean, that's, even if you're neurotypical, that's not exactly easy work, is it, raising 3 other humans? I can only think about myself. I wouldn't be able to look after 3 other kids. But anyway, she obviously doesn't have the autism I have. But what I'm saying is, basically, gonna take some Mickey. I don't think she's autistic personally. I know I'm going to get people screaming at me, but like I say, she's too able, she's too high functioning, and at the end of the day, it becomes ridiculous when it diagnoses people like her. It really does. It's just, it's becoming absurd, basically. So that's my reaction to that, and I do worry that members of the public who watch it might not. I mean, it was good that they did show the more extreme types of autism, like they showed people who do need support, and they showed more like subtle cases, like at a mainstream secondary school. They showed some there who obviously don't look obviously different, but at the same time are clearly disabled and struggling, because otherwise they wouldn't need the special education support at school. So it was quite good that they did show a range of different portrayals of autism, not just like the extremely classic, obvious end. But so that was good. But yeah, it just does annoy me when like extremely able people get diagnosed, because I do feel it waters down the concept, and I feel that people won't take autism seriously anymore. It'd be harder for people who do need support to get support, because people are like, oh, autism, that's not really that big deal. Christine McGuinness has got it, what are you saying, when it's just going to dilute the whole concept, which is actually problematic for people who really are needing support, and particularly with the Tory government with cups potentially. It's like they're doing the Tory dirty work for them, these celebrities getting diagnosed. But anyway, I'll finish. That's what I want to say on that one. Now to answer for questions that some of you left about my reaction to Melanie Sykes and her diagnosis, which I also feel is rather dubious. Okay, one person said, they claim that I claim that Melanie Sykes is high functioning than me. They said, but how do you know that? Autism is an internal disability, not an external one. Okay, so how do I know that? Well, I know that based on facts, basically, facts that can't be refuted. Melanie Sykes does not need benefits. Melanie Sykes is perfectly capable of going to work. Melanie Sykes does not have executive functioning impairments to the extent that she can't go out to work. Melanie Sykes is able to raise a child, which requires social skills. Melanie Sykes has been able to have relationships in order to have a kid, and not once throughout her life has she ever needed to rely on the state because she can't actually go out to work. Now, I have never been able to work. I cannot look after another person, my child or not my child. I cannot do that because I don't have the ability to put someone else's needs above my own, because I have real problems with social skills, and basically I have executive functioning impairments that are very severe, which means that basically I need my dad to effectively do loads of stuff for me, that if I didn't have my dad's support, I would be really vulnerable, and I do worry about what will happen when my dad's no longer around. But thankfully I do have my brother to look after me, and there are other people in my family who will be able to look after me once my dad's no longer here, so that's good. But yeah, like I'm saying, a lot of the stuff that I can do is facilitated for me by my dad. Now, Melanie Sykes is perfectly able. She's a celebrity. She's managed to get to where she is without any support, and that's the reason why she's more high functioning than I am. It's a basic, obvious fact. Now, coming back to what this person was saying, autism is not just an internal disability. It has external effects. The external effects are whether or not you can go out to work. The external effects are whether or not you can raise a family. The external effects are whether or not you can have a relationship. The external effects are whether or not you can maintain friends. The external effects are whether or not you need support to look after your finances, and so on and so on and so on. Everyone's affected by autism differently. Some people with autism, at the really extreme end, who are far more disabled than I am, need someone with them 24/7. to look after them because they literally can't even go to the toilet on their own, okay? Now, excuse me, but if they're saying that that person is the same level of disability as Melanie Sykes, words fail me, basically. Clearly, there are different degrees of disability within autism. I would say that I'm somewhere in the middle of a scale. I don't need someone around me 24/7. I do have a level of independence. I do have agency. I can talk very well. I can express myself verbally quite well, but obviously when I'm stressed I can't. But most of the time I'm pretty eloquent verbally when I have to be. So yeah, obviously I'm not as disabled as someone who doesn't have that ability. But I am still disabled because, you know, because there are so many things that I need help and support with, and that's why I would say I'm somewhere in the middle of a scale. I'm not as high functioning as someone like Melanie Sykes, and I'm not as high functioning as someone who can manage a family and basically look after other human beings, or have, because I can't do that. It's not that I have a cognitive disability in that area. So what I'm saying is there are degrees of disability, and it seems quite straightforward to me. And it's not being offensive saying that Melanie Sykes is more high functioning than me, any more than it's offensive for me to say I'm more high functioning for someone who has to wear nappies and needs someone 24/7 around them. It's just stating a simple fact. There are degrees of disability, and I feel that those who are extremely high functioning like Melanie Sykes should be honest and humble enough to admit it, instead of trying to pretend they're the same functioning level as someone who can't work. I just feel that's offensive. Just as it would be as offensive for me to say that I'm as disabled as someone who needs someone with them 24/7, who literally can't even talk, or do you know what I mean? Like, that would be offensive because they're way more disabled than what I am, and I'm so glad I'm not as disabled as that, because that must be hell. At least I've got my at least I can talk, and at least I've got my intellect, But there are degrees of disability, is what I'm saying, okay? So that's my answer to that one. It just feels very straightforward to me. Okay. The other one I want to apply to is an interesting point, actually, about how most conditions, such as obsessive-compulsive disorder and anxiety, are specific categories. So for example, you have different types of anxiety that are diagnosed. For example, you have social anxiety, you have agoraphobia, you have generalised anxiety disorder and things like that. They're given specific descriptions depending on the type of anxiety you have. It's not like a generic one-size-fits-all thing. And the question is then, why is autism going in the other direction, where you just have one name, autism spectrum, as opposed to different types of autism? And I would agree with the person. I think that's a very interesting question, actually, and something worth pondering. And I'm not a scientist, and unfortunately I'm just as flummoxed as the person who commented, because I don't know. I literally do not know. I'd love to be able to ask a scientist why we're moving in this direction. Why is autism becoming a broader diagnosis as opposed to one with categories, when every other condition pretty much under the sun is divided up? And I do feel that actually, if autism were divided up, it would make things a lot easier in terms of communicating about what the particular needs are. Because then it would be very clear that, say, someone like Christine McGuinness or Melanie Sykes does not share the same type of autism as, say, someone like me. Just as I don't share the same type of autism as someone who can't speak, because clearly there are different degrees of needs, different degrees of disability, and it's just not all the same. So I do feel maybe they do need to move towards a more sort of like categorized approach. And the person also says, of course, like with identity labels, obviously autism isn't an identity label, or at least it's not for me. I mean, for something in the neurodiversity movement, it has become that, but it shouldn't be an identity label, it should be a disability label. But if you're looking for identity labels that are genuine identities, such as gender and sexuality, they're split up. So you have many different forms of homosexuality isn't just one category. You have many different forms of homosexuality, for example, to reflect the fact that there are many different types, and that it's not all the same thing. But with autism, it's like going in the opposite direction. You move from lots of different categories to just one generic condition. So it's going in the other direction. I'm just as flummoxed as that person. I really do not know. I wish I did know what's going on there. Someone else says that people who are high functioning aren't less disabled than people with classic autism. I think I can sort of see where that person is coming from and why they might argue that, in the sense that obviously we should try not to compare in order to in order to dismiss, because while obviously comparisons are inevitable, and a moment ago I compared myself with Melanie Sykes, but sometimes it is important to compare just to make a point. At the same time, one mustn't compare in order to diminish someone's genuine disability. So, when you have two disabled people, for example, someone like myself and someone with classic autism, we're both disabled, but in different ways. And it can be quite unhelpful and potentially hurtful for someone to constantly draw attention to how I'm not as disabled as, say, someone with classic autism. Because while it's true, I'm not as disabled as someone with classic autism in some ways, in the sense that, like I said before, I don't need someone around me 24/7. I have a lot of ability that that person doesn't have. At the same time, I am still very disabled. So, comparing me against that other person, while it might contain some truth in inverted commas, it isn't helpful when it comes to trying to advocate